What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we've got to talk about some new logos cards. You see, there's been a bunch that have been revealed, and we've actually got, I think, 7 we've got to get through in this video, so we need to get rolling. But one of them, I think, stands above the others as, oh my goodness, this is exciting. Shout out to the lovely Ludovic Orban, to Rachel Trimble, to Brad Minig, and to people on Reddit who have been kind enough to share these cards, give images, etc, etc. But I want to start off with Dataforge. Dataforge looks amazing, like full-on amazing. It is a key cheating card. Yes, that is the third one that got revealed at Gen Con. And you'll notice Logos didn't have a key cheating card before. It was one of the few houses that didn't. Well, now it absolutely does, and it reads, you may forge a key at plus 10 current cost, reduced by 1 amber for each card in your hand. And it gives you an amber bonus. Now, you might, however, notice that this is extremely similar to key abduction, though it is objectively worse. Key abduction forges at plus 9 current cost, minus 1 for each card in your hand. This forges at plus 10 current cost, minus 1 for each card in your hand. And key abduction, it doesn't always work. Like, we see key charge coming out all the time. Key abduction nowhere near as much. Now, to be fair, we did see a Vault Tour recently where the person who won actually managed to win the entire tournament, because in the final they pulled off double Battle Fleet and then a key abduction. So why am I getting excited about Dataforge when key abduction is fine but not exciting? And the answer is because Logos has so much more draw power. I mean, you've got the moderately uninspiring Doc Bookdom, when you reap, draw a card. And we got a bunch like that. Quick, the Adventurer, when you fight, you draw a card. Fine. But then we've got stuff like Professor Sutterkin. And Professor Sutterkin is amazing. Professor Sutterkin allows you to draw a card when you reap for each friendly Logos creature. Now, what's key here is that it is each friendly Logos creature, not each ready friendly Logos creature. So essentially, you're starting off forging at 16, but every creature you play, and every creature you already have in play, and yes, that does include Professor Sutterkin, will reduce the cost by 1. Then, of course, you're reaping, so there's 1 of the amber you need. I mean, if you've got, say, 4 creatures down, including Professor Sutterkin, then all of a sudden, instead of forging at 16, you're forging at 11. But that is, of course, not particularly realistic, because let's not forget that you will have other cards in your hand. I mean, generally speaking, you should start your turn with 6 cards in hand. So if you've got no way of drawing extra cards, one of the cards in your hand will be Dataforge, and you'll be forging at 11. The regular 6 plus 5, reduced by 5 because you've got 5 non-Dataforge cards in your hand. So unless your opponent's got something like a Succubus to bring your hand size down, or you're chained, you should be forging absolute maximum at 11. But with stuff like Professor Sutterkin, it is more likely that you're just going to be able to forge for free. And then, of course, we all need to remember the Archimedes board wiping, that ruling we got recently, whereby if Archimedes is on the field and a board wipe is played, all of your creatures, other than Archimedes, unless there's 2 Archimedes, get archived. And that's the other reason this is so good, because Logos archives. Logos is a house which is phenomenal at archiving. And that means that you get to build up a big archive of creatures or upgrades or actions or whatever, loads of cards, and then at the beginning of your turn you take your archive, and if there are 6 cards in your archive, that means at the beginning of your turn you will have 6 extra cards. 12 rather than 6. You see where we're going with this? There are 2 things Logos does better than other houses, and that is draw cards and archive cards. And they are the 2 things you really need to take advantage of Dataforge. Yes, I know it's an objectively worse key abduction, but I expect this to be played successfully a lot more than key abduction, because this fits what Logos does way better than key abduction fits what Mars does. Cool. But we have got a whole bunch of other cards. How about we have a look at Babbling Bibliophile? It is a 1 power, 0 armor creature, and when you reap, you draw 2 cards. Oh, look, I just happened to have mentioned it straight after Keyforge. Maybe it was deliberate. Maybe it's because it's alphabetically first. I'm the only one that will ever know. It's a much worse Doc Bookton. And the thing is, it's a 1 power creature. I mean, in Age of Ascension decks, we see loads of shadows, as we do with Call of the Archons decks. But we also see whistling darts and throwing stars, which will just instantly take this out. It's got 1 power, but it doesn't have elusive. It is extremely easy to get off the board. But it's kind of like a Burn the Witch card, because if your opponent doesn't get it off the board, you're drawing 2 cards when you reap. It's a phenomenal effect on a phenomenally weak creature. I don't really have time to go into all the different ways that drawing more cards is good, but if you've played enough games of Keyforge, or in fact any card game, with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions, you will know, Uno's a good exception, you will know that having a large hand size is good. This is going to very much help with that. How about Quant? Quant is a lovely little card. It's a 3 power, 0 armor creature. When you reap, you may play 1 non-logos action card this turn. That's cool. That's really nice. Now, it's only action, not upgrade, not artifact, not creature. This is not Helperbot. Helperbot, when you play it, you may just play 1 non-logos card. This is when you reap, and it is action only, which is sad. But don't get me wrong, it's still fun. You still get to play a non-logos action. It's not as good as Helperbot, it's not as good as Phase Shift, although there's quite a lot of house cheating now in logos. But it's still a very nice card. Problem is, it's 3 power, no elusive, and it's great. It is one which is fairly likely to be targeted by your opponent because they know how much of an advantage that gives you. They aren't going to want this to stay on the field. What is interesting is also in Worlds Collide, we're getting Comm Officer Kirby, a 3 power, 0 armor creature. When you play, fight, or reap, you may play a non-Star Reliant artifact, upgrade, or action. So it allows you to do artifacts and upgrades as well as actions, and it's when you play and fight as well as reap. I mean, this is objectively a worse Comm Officer Kirby, which makes me a little bit sad. They're both 3 power, 0 armor, but Kirby lets you play a wider variety of cards in a wider variety of situations. So I'm going to be honest with you, as a huge fan of logos, I feel a little bit personally slighted by this. Sorry. How about Tautau Vapors? I'm going to go Tautau Vapors just because it's easier to say. It is an action card. When you play it, you draw 2 cards, you archive a card. It's draw power. There's no amber bonus or anything like that. It is flat out draw power. But draw power is good. We've already talked about Babbling Bibliophile in this video. We started off talking about Keyforge and how broken that is, potentially anyway. I mean, Time Traveler draws 2 cards and gives you an amber. That's awesome. It's one of the best cards in the game. And now all of a sudden this is coming along, drawing 2 cards and archiving 1. And make no mistake about it, both parts of this are good. Drawing 2 cards, good. You archive after you draw, which means you can archive 1 of the 2 you drew. And we've talked about archiving a lot on this channel. Archiving is great. Archiving is, you just pop a card into your archive, and at the beginning of your turn, you can either pick up all or none of your archived cards. So maybe you build up an archive full of one particular house for a monster turn later on, or maybe you just stash 1 card that you really need for later, like in fact Keyforge. Have that in your archive of a bunch of others, and then pick it out when you desperately need it to go and forge a key. Make no mistake about it, drawing is good. This lets you draw 2 and archive a card. I like this. The lack of Ember bonus makes me a little bit sad, but I like it. Universal Recycle Bin. Another one of these we've not got a great image of, but we do what we can. And it is an artifact, and you get an Amber bonus when you play it. That alone makes it kind of cool. And it reads, it's an action. archive a purged card that you own. Now, for anyone paying attention, and please correct me in the comment section if I'm wrong about this, I believe this is the very first time we've actually seen a mechanic whereby you can get cards that are purged. Generally speaking, purged cards are gone from the game. Purging is good. It's why we get stuff like Oubliette, which goes and purges stuff that you just want off the field. Oubliette is a Shadows card that lets you purge a creature with power 3 or lower, and any chance you get, you're using it to purge Ember Imp, because Ember Imp is really annoying. It limits you to playing 2 cards during your turn. You can use whatever you like, but you can only play 2 cards during your turn. Well, here, ladies and gentlemen, here you're loving it. Because now, your opponent purges one of your creatures, you can archive it, and then of course, firstly, you can just drag it out your archive whenever you want. And secondly, seriously, Data Forge. Drawing cards, building up your archive is good. And I started a video talking about Data Forge, and I told you that drawing cards and building your archive are the 2 things that logos do better than anyone else. This actually lets you grab a card back from being purged. That's nuts. Like, seriously, it's the first card we've seen. And this is inevitable in every card game. There's always a mechanic that removes cards from the game. And then someone always brings in a mechanic to get them back. That's what we see here. Gives logos an advantage. And seriously, I know we're not at the end of the video, but I loved logos in Call of the Archons. Age of Ascension came around, they were not as good. Oh my goodness, I am adoring what I'm seeing for them in Worlds Collide. So how about we have a little bit of a chat about information exchange. Now, shout out to the lovely Rachel Trimble. I had missed this card. She brought it to my attention. I'd literally not even seen it. Don't know how, but so many leaks and reveals during Gen Con. It's kind of cool. So information exchange then, what does it do? Well, it's an action card, no amber bonus, and when you play, you steal an amber. But if your opponent stole amber from you on their previous turn, you steal 2 amber instead. This is clearly a reaction to Shadows. Shadows has dominated the Keyforge metagame right since the very first tournaments. It should be no surprise that we are getting some anti-stealing cards. I mean, this is unconfirmed, but somebody apparently interviewed or had a quick chat with Brad, probably wasn't a real interview, the lead designer of the game, and he said that if you don't like Shadows and the stealing, etc., you're gonna love Worlds Collide. This is one card that we've seen that fits into that. And it creates some really interesting game states. So let's say, for argument's sake, you've got 6 amber. You're about to forge a key. Now, your opponent is they can either try and stop you forging a key, or they can let you forge a key, but letting you forge a key is bad, because if you forge 3, you win. So a lot of the time, what your opponent does is they play something like an urchin. Okay, it only steals 1 amber, but only stealing 1 amber is fine if it stops you forging a key. But then, next turn, you play information exchange and you steal 2. And to be fair, it steals 1, even if your opponent didn't steal. One of the things that Logos has been sorely lacking is stopping your opponent forging. Not much I mean, you've had Dexter to capture, but it's not exactly the best card ever. Not really any stealing. I mean, you've had Effervescent Principle, which is great, but it's, a bit of a double-edged sword. Both players lose half their amber rounding down. It's great as an emergency don't forge card, but, still not perfect. So the fact of the matter is, this is a great anti-stealing card, while also being a really good stealing card. This makes Logos better. And finally, Wormhole something? You see, unfortunately, this is one of the cards. There was a display that FFG put out, and they showed us some cards which unfortunately overlapped with other cards. So we know the first half of the name is Wormhole. We don't know what the second half of the name is. It's got 3 power. We don't know if it's got any armor. The majority of Logos creatures don't. It's not an armor-heavy house, so I'm going to assume that it doesn't have any armor. And when you reap, you reveal the top card of your deck. If it is a Logos card, play it. Otherwise, archive it. And here's the thing. This is a great, great card. I adore this card. Because either you get to play an extra card. Now, to be fair, it could be something like Effervescent Principle that comes back to bite you. But it could be something like Helperbot, which then lets you play another card from a different house. So this is awesome. I love this. But even if it's not a Logos card, then you archive it. But we've talked about archiving quite a bit in this video and how useful it can be. If you've got a deck with Dataforge, and I do believe Dataforge is going to be a real big thing going forward, I think key cheating is going to become more and more important as the game goes along, especially with all the new key cheating cards we've seen coming in Worlds Collide. The fact of the matter is that building up an archive is great with Dataforge. And even if not, you're still archiving. Archiving can be fun. Now, sometimes, and this is random archiving. Random archiving can go wrong. Random archiving can mean that you're building up a really good archive of Logos cards, and then you go put a discard in your archive. And now, all of a sudden, when you're dragging all those Logo cards out your archive, you've got one discard clogging up your hand. That's a pain. But it happens, right? There's not much you can do about it. But you might play an extra card, you might build up your archive. I adore this. Now, it's a free power creature, no armor, it's easy to get rid of. But I said that about Doc Bookton. And I said that about Professor Sutterkin. And I said that about Babbling Bibliophile. Sooner or later, you're going to have so many good cards and good creatures that your opponent doesn't want you to have on the field that it doesn't make a difference. They cannot get rid of all of them. And that's when you swoop in, ladies and gentlemen. So those are the new Logos cards. I love a lot of these, and I think Dataforge is going to be flat out phenomenal. But I'd very much like to know what you think about this, so please do let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and follow me on Twitter at the Wossy, where we talk about a whole bunch of games like Keyforge and anything else that takes my fancy. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Ross, and you've been watching Wossy Plays.